Welcome back. It's Mushlove from the Mushroom. I'm Jeremy. That's Dan.
What
We're
up?
back in the groove of things. We took a couple of months off, or it felt like a couple months. It was really like 3 weeks, I think. But we are finally back in business. I feel like we're back in business. This podcast is going to be on YouTube. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify and all that. But who knows if it'll stay there, because all these companies are starting to censor absolutely everything. It's crazy. So our favorite mushroom brand, Mushmore, their main Instagram account got taken down about a month ago. We asked them why they got taken down. They don't really know. There's another one of our favorite influencers, Kathleen O, Coach Kathy. She got taken down that same week. Another one of our favorite influencers to fall, Mycelial Minds, out of Denver. It's where actually I get a lot of my spore syringes from. He got shut down that week. A lot of people got taken down that week, all related to mushrooms. No one really knew what was going on or why. Now, yesterday, I actually had my first stint in Facebook jail. Which I'm feeling bad as ever, and I'm ready to fuck shit up. But I was in Facebook jail just for mentioning mushrooms. Literally just said mushrooms are awesome, and I got put in Facebook jail. I saw 5 groups this week got taken down. None of them are illegal mushroom groups. They're like groups about foraging for mushrooms and edible mushrooms in Pennsylvania and whatever, like pretty pictures of mushrooms. I forget all the groups, but they're like nothing to do with psychedelic. All got taken down this week. One of them by started by this guy, Alan Rockefeller, who's a pretty awesome photographer. Met him at this Mushroom Fest last month. He was able to appeal and get it back up, thankfully, but all the others are still down. So I guess what I'm thinking is, what's going on? Why all this censorship all of a sudden? I don't like to think like too much into like conspiracies and all that, although like I definitely know a lot of conspiracies have ended up coming true. But part of me thinks like maybe big pharma or big agriculture could be at least a little bit behind this. And then why would I think that? I feel like mushrooms, the illegal ones, are going to be legalized in the next year or two. So a big company, what are they going to do before it legalizes? Wipe out all of the competition, legalize, and then you guys are the only people that people know of, and you can kind of monopolize the industry. What's your take on all of this, Danny?
Well, first of all, I think it's incredibly sad because I've been seeing the same things you've been seeing, the absolute crazy amount of censorship. Just to bring another anecdote that is not related to the mushroom sphere, I have a friend of mine, Kane Kerner, who makes a lot of posts about positivity. He makes TikToks. He's grown his TikTok accounts like 1.3 million over the past year, all about positivity, mental health. Literally, this kid puts out nothing negative. And he's also a rapper, and he's got a lot of attitude. He's a cool kid. But he got his account flagged on Instagram, which has like 60 or 70K followers, because he literally put a story up posing like this, like grabbing his
No way.
and putting up the middle finger. And
Or was it the balls, you think, or was it the middle finger?
it was the
Or
middle
it the
finger.
combo?
No, it was the middle finger. It
I
gave
told
me.
you.
Yeah, and so he has made a couple posts about the algorithm and about censorship, and he's been going off about it. He has some really funny satirical posts, and like I just saw like another instance of like Rihanna was wearing a shirt out in public, and it said "Think while it's still legal." Like I think people are starting to realize like the limitations to free speech overall are getting absolutely out of control. And I mean, if you look at the past election with like what Twitter was doing, censoring one party versus another, censoring certain ideologies versus another, and it's getting out of control. I mean, these big tech companies are basically just as powerful as entire countries, political regimes and stuff at this time, and they're swaying the masses and choosing what gets to be seen and what doesn't. And I mean, that is just straight propaganda and stuff. A friend of mine, we were talking about how in China, like it's a communist thing, and people in China were saying how no one watches the news because they just know it's blatant propaganda, and they were kind of like laughing, and they're like, well, why do Americans watch the news still and like believe that that's real? You know what I mean? And I went on this rant that like we have this. I feel like America, we've done a better job of upholding the illusion of democracy, where everyone's like, "Oh no, well, our what we say matters," and obviously we have a lot more freedom than China's Communist Party. Don't get me wrong, but like, I think at this point, our news networks, the social media, it is all very, very censored. There's a lot of components of propaganda. They push the stories that are the most lucrative for them. I read something recently that I think all of the major news networks except one, I can't remember the one that doesn't, shares a board, like someone on their board of directors is shared with a pharma company. So I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the pharma industry is closely tied with the mass media, and that they're swaying public perception. And like you said, a lot of things, going back to conspiracy theories, I never want to get too crazy and conspire too hard, but a year ago, a lot of the things that everyone, if you spoke about, whether, around COVID, around, pharmaceutical things, people would say, oh, that is a blatant conspiracy. Now they've been proven to be absolutely true. And everyone's like, oh, well, that's just, whatever. Like, and then they sweep it under the rug. So it's like, if you speak about it, you're a conspiracy theorist. And then when it comes to light, people don't want to even give it the credence and stuff. I know a lot of big YouTubers, for example, have been demonetized for doctors who have talked about things relating to COVID. Russell Brand, who's talked about a lot of political things, like they get demonetized or completely blocked. So it's just absolutely insane to me. These people, this is their livelihood. They put out content to talk about what they want to talk about, and then it gets hit with the ban hammer. Or like you were saying, mushrooms that aren't even related to psychedelic illegal things. It's like, why are we censoring that? And I totally think I agree with you in the aspect that I know Big Pharma probably feels, first of all, that, like you said, they want to sweep up and they want to take that for themselves when it does go legal, and they want to have a corner on the market. But I also think there's a big fear around, I follow some certain mushroom microdosing communities, and I see people be like, oh, this helped me with my ADHD. I don't feel the need to take Adderall. I don't feel the need to be on antidepressants. I don't feel the need to be on barbiturate, like a Xanax, all these different things. I mean, if everyone started to take something that's free, that grows out of the ground, because, as we've talked about on previous episode, nature can't be patented, and these pharma companies are trying to find ways to extract psilocybin and patent that. But I think they're terrified of that, because this is a natural remedy that grows out of the ground that is taking people off of these substances that trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars a year are being driven profit. So I would imagine that they're going to do everything in their power to censor that. And I think these same pharma companies probably work closely with these big tech companies, and they get to choose what the narrative is. So that's my take on it, and it's extremely fucked up and kind of upsetting. It's like, I think a lot of people see it, but it's like, now what do we do? How do we actually illuminate and bring the truth out? And I think, I'm big into crypto and Ethereum and things of that nature. People are talking about Web 3.0 and the decentralization of information and money. I think Web 3.0 will be a big step forward in the pursuit of freedom of speech. You see social media platforms that are based around freedom of speech starting to pop up. So hopefully we get more people fighting for it, because I think it's becoming more blatantly obvious than ever.
I definitely agree with a lot of that. You said quite a bit. I wrote down notes so I could try and remember a lot. I feel like there's definitely probably like 5 different podcast topics that came out of that we can talk in the future. One of the things I wrote down, I guess, to respond, the illusion of democracy. Definitely an illusion, because we aren't a democracy, which I feel like a lot of people might have realized in the last couple of years, but didn't know before. And a lot of people still don't know that. We're a republic. We say we're a democracy, but we're not. We're a republic, which means that we vote for constituents to represent us, which maybe isn't the best way to run things. If we should actually move towards democracy. But yeah, there's definitely an illusion of democracy. It's not a democracy. Then you commented a little bit on big pharma, big media. I saw something, I think it was this week, and definitely resonated with me a lot. I consider myself like at war with big pharma, big agriculture. I think they're one of the worst evildoers in the world. But I think like big agriculture, so all these mass farms that I don't think all GMOs are necessarily bad. I think a cow is actually technically genetically modified organism. So like, and well, cows maybe aren't that good actually. I'm about to convince myself wrong, but I don't think all GMOs are technically bad. But the amount that we use them, and a lot of the GMOs that we use aren't the best, and we make grapes like the size of apples just to like, and we shine it with wax and we make it look really pretty in the grocery store just to like look good. But that fruit has no nutrients and it's actually probably hurting us because of God knows what chemicals are in there. So big
Absolutely.
agriculture, I feel, makes us sick. Then big pharmacy doesn't heal you. The goal of big pharmacy, I feel, is never to heal you. It's to just get rid of your side effects and your symptoms so that you can deal with it. So big agriculture makes you sick. Big pharmacy keeps you sick and just gets you on a repetitive subscription, not a
Right.
prescription. It's really like a subscription of just pills. So you have a repetitive revenue stream. And then big media basically just lies to you and makes you not realize everything. And you kind of just think like that's the way it's supposed to be. I feel like those three kind of cycle
Mm.
around with each other, and they're just really bad. And most of society is kind of like just stuck in that cycle, and it definitely sucks. I guess then what I was gonna say, and I do agree with you 99%, but just to play devil's advocate a little bit, is I know these big tech companies, it probably is a lot more difficult to um, moderate everything and keep everything clean and good than like some might suspect. So I kind of think big pharma might be behind this censorship of mushrooms and trying to go after mushrooms. Who knows? But I also think that like there's probably a guy at Facebook who's trying his best to like maybe keep legal mushrooms away from like most groups or whatever. And when
Right.
they put that in the algorithm, it just blankets all mushrooms and it just wipes out all mushrooms. I
Totally.
don't know
Yeah.
if that's the case, but like it definitely seems like that happens sometimes. I guess where I would agree with you though way more is when we realize that, or if they do realize that, it kind of gets swept under the rug and they never like admit that they were wrong or they admit that they did it. It's just
Yeah.
like kind of forgotten about. And it's like I kind of don't care so much that they said like you couldn't say COVID came from a lab in the beginning. Whatever, that's what they thought. But then when it came out that it probably did come from a lab, no one admitted like, hey, they were wrong and they shouldn't have done that. It kind of was just like forgotten and whatever. And it's like, hey,
Absolutely.
I'd have a lot more respect for Facebook if they came out and said like, we had a policy that was completely wrong. We realize that we're gonna try not to do it again. But like COVID did probably come from a lab or whatever it might be. But instead, they just kind of forget about it and it's on to like the new thing.
Yeah.
And there's no ownership of ever making mistakes. And then I guess I'm curious what the solution is. So like I like decentralization a lot. Something that I've been hearing a little bit more about is basically with decentralization, at least you don't have a central power. But what ends up happening is these different nodes of decentralization get stronger and stronger where they're not centralized, but they become super strong and they have a little bit more too much
Right.
influence. So like China with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is decentralized, but there's really like five groups that control like the narrative of Bitcoin. So what I've been hearing, and I'm trying to do more research on, I don't really understand completely, but it's basically distributed systems are what's going to come after decentralized systems, where basically like I don't know actually more to explain it, but distributed systems. I feel like what I interpret is
Peer to
basically just
peer.
say again.
Like probably peer to peer, where it's like an equal distribution of information and data between every node.
Yeah, and there's never gonna be like one node that just has
Right.
like an over amount of power or whatever. So I feel like Facebook is a great tool, but they're super powerful. They're probably more powerful than most countries.
Right.
Um, and maybe there needs to be a new system where that power is kind of distributed in some certain way. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg shouldn't like have all of the power. Like a lot of that power should be kind of distributed and decision making distributed and all that. I don't know, but definitely feel like something needs to change. And then I guess my last like devil's advocate, and like I agree with you, but I also like do understand the other side is like I don't like censorship, but I don't have much confidence in the majority of people, unfortunately. People are no offense to people, but overall pretty stupid, easily manipulated, making decisions on feelings, just like not logical all the time,
Right.
where it's very easy for people to be told the wrong thing and then believe it. And there's more stupid people than there are smart people. So like if there isn't any censorship, I feel like we run the risk of having the wrong narrative kind of become popular. And then how do you really fix that? So like I don't agree with censorship. I feel like there should be just more good information for people to make better decisions. But I'm just not so confident in that for some reason.
I feel like a trend I've noticed, just to bounce back off of that too, is though like a lot of the time the smart people who are giving the proper information wind up receiving more censorship than the stupid people putting out misinformation, because the more wrong information that is circling around, the more mass confusion there is, and the more, whereas when people put like very logical factual things out that's supported, that's when I feel like I've seen a lot more of a tendency for there to be censorship, because it's like, oh wow, they're getting close, don't let the stupid people start to wake up. But I mean, like you said, it's censorship does go both ways, and it does seem like that it is fairly equal, so I definitely agree with what you're saying on that.
Yeah, and it sucks too because like things change over time. I feel like people are stupid, but people have a lot of access to information now, and
Yeah,
I feel like that's been
there's
like
no
pretty
excuse
dangerous.
now.
Yeah, but it's also been pretty dangerous. I feel like there's like science to me, this is my opinion, I guess. Science doesn't mean that whatever the scientist determines is what it is. Science is just like all the information we have led us to this, but if there's a lot more information that comes about, this thing could change. So like something I keep on seeing is people saying like, oh, scientists and they're like, scientists recommended sugar in the 1960s. And like, how are we going to take a vaccine now just listening to scientists? And it's like, yo, scientists were idiots in the 1960s. They shouldn't have recommended sugar, but no scientist is recommending sugar now. They made a mistake in 1960s, and they know it's not good for you now. Where it's like, um, I don't know. It's an argument, I guess, but it's like I feel like that's a narrative that you just repeatedly hear from people, and it's like, yo, I get the argument, but it's like um, to me, that's not really actually the case.
I agree with that completely. And the one thing I would say just that's different about the current times relating to science is that what's sad to me is because in the past it was like as science developed and scientists would be like, oh, we were wrong, this is the new information, and we may be wrong again in the future. Now, again, with censorship and with politics and mass tech, is that science has become this thing where it's almost just like that is the way it is, like religion. Like people are beginning to treat science like religion, where they're like, oh, that's just the way it is, and they don't question it. And like going back to the thing with like the lab leak, there was a lot of scientists who very early on were like, yeah, the wet market thing doesn't make any sense, there's a lot of evidence supporting the lab leak thing, but they were afraid that if they said that they would be perceived as like, you know, either Trump supporters, or that they were going to like, now science and politics are so tied that that becomes really scary, where it's like the true information, there were so many scientists who were like, we can't even talk about this because people won't believe it because they'll think that this is misinformation. So that's what's the scariest thing about this mass censorship and putting out so much misinformation and just slapping, you're a conspiracy theorist just for wanting to talk about a certain idea, is that people, you know what I mean? Like scientists can't even speak the truth in certain instances. Like with that, like there's a lot of articles written of scientists. I know Hamilton from Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia had a really amazing thing talking about that on Russell Brand's podcast, where he's like, science is becoming religion now, where it's just like, oh, well, that's the way it is. And if you like, you can't,
Scientism. I
Yeah,
believe it's called scientism.
scientism, exactly. So I think that's really interesting too, because it's like in the past it could have been like, oh, well, we were wrong, but now it's so politically tied that these scientists might lose their job if they say a certain thing of information, because it's like, oh, well, you support this, and that's counterintuitive to what we want, and that's not the. And again, science as a whole is based off of funding, so it's like, if you don't want, if there's not money, or if these big powers to be that fund these things don't want a certain thing to be, to come about, they're funding the things that is in alignment with what they want the data
Right.
for. So
That's why cannabis, it's been illegal to research, and that's why there's no research on it. There's no science on cannabis saying that it's good because it was illegal to research,
right.
not because it wasn't good. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, and scientism definitely not a good thing. I can't help but feel like it's a lot of not the brightest people just looking at a surface level of something, and like everyone thinks that they're a scientist now because they can read a headline from a science journal. And
That's
it's
not
like,
peer reviewed and shit. Like, yeah.
yeah, and people aren't even reading into the journal. Like a lot of times, it doesn't say what people think it says. Like they don't even interpret it correctly. They just
Right.
see like 3 words and like, oh, that's what it is. And it's like, no, like the article you shared literally doesn't even say what
Say
you
that.
think.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy, but whatever. I guess I'm starting to just not be as reliant on social media. I'm gonna still use it because it's such a powerful tool, but I've already been thinking of just trying to make my own website, trying to make my own things for people to come to me so that I'm in control. But then it makes you think like that feels like I'm in control, but at the end of the day, Amazon is probably controlling my network or like my hosting services where even if you have your own website, that can get censored down the line. To actually like run your whole thing on your own would take like an extremely large amount of time, money, and resources that most people just don't have access to. So, as much as it sucks to kind of play by all these people's rules, we kind of have to until there's more choices.
Yeah, it's really interesting too to see how more and more people are, like you said, they're still on an infrastructure controlled by higher powers, but it's interesting how like in the early 2000s and late 90s everything was like email mailing lists, and it was direct to consumer, and like over time it's been like social media allow like discoverability, algorithmic finding, all of these different things, and it's almost like it's going backwards in certain ways with like the marketing trends. At least it's like
Mm-hmm.
now I see a lot of people who, again, like Russell Brand, I'm big into his content, I watch his YouTube stuff, and he's like, please sign up for my mailing letter and my email list, because these platforms all might get taken down tomorrow, and at least I'll have still a direct stream to your inbox where I can communicate at least something. So as long as like the email shit is still there and that doesn't get taken down, which I mean it very well could as well, but
Definitely.
it's interesting to see the trends going backwards. It was so like centralized and like on these let the algorithm do its thing, and now we're sort of going back to trends like 20 years ago of like direct to consumer. So it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see how that goes. Soon we'll be having
Yeah.
courier doves fly fucking hidden letters to you to get your products. You know what I'm saying? So
They're not going to be doves. They're going to be drones.
the courier drones, yeah.
Courier drones. There's speaking of stupid people. There's people who think that all the birds in the world are actually drones by the government to spy on us.
And they charge on light posts at night. That's why they sit
Yeah,
on light poles and shit. No, I've heard that shit. It's so funny,
it's
bro.
it's crazy. And you'll say like, "Yo, that's not true," and they'll be like, "No, Google censored it. You just can't find anything about it." You're like,
That's
no,
like
that's where you're taking something that's true and completely flipping it around for your own narrative.
those people are on par with flat earthers, in my opinion, about the
Yeah,
same level of
but dude, there's a lot of them. It's
yeah,
kind of it's not.
alarming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. But what can you do? That was great time as always. Hopefully this doesn't get censored. Hopefully some people can actually listen to this. If it does get censored, I think it means that we're doing a good thing though. It means that we are growing. So thank you as always. Love you guys. Hopefully we can have one of you as a guest soon. Danny, any final thoughts?
Nah, just keep the good fight going, keep illuminating, and you know what I mean. Eventually, I mean, I'm a big advocate of Eckhart Tolle and what he talks about, and there's a collective conscious, and right now I think there's a lot of shadows and a lot of areas of hidden information and stuff, but I do think that light always prevails, and that you can one flashlight can turn any shadow into light and transmute that into something. So as long as we get more and more light switches going on, hopefully we can overpower the misinformation and the confusion, and eventually create that collective conscious that is building a brighter future for tomorrow. So
I love it, Dan. Thank you. See you next week. Much
much
love.
love.